Welcome back to another Reddit reaction, boys and gals, the series where I go on Reddit so that luckily you don't have to, because this is a very toxic website. And we are back on r/Battlefield2042 today, which I haven't been on for a minute. Most of the other Reddit reactions I've done lately have been, I think I did one for the finals and one for X-Defiant. So it's actually been a few months since I've been on this subreddit, at least for a video anyway. And yeah, I'm not too sure what to expect. I think a lot of this is going to be about like the negative side of season 7. I'm not too sure. So anyway, without wasting any time, we'll go to top post of the month, because yeah, the last week, it's been like nearly 2 weeks since the update. So, and in fact, by the time this video goes up, it'll be more than that. So we'll go for the month and just see what people have been saying about the update. The top post is immediately about the skins and the complaints about skins, which I'm sort of torn on. I kind of see where people are coming from, and I also don't care as much myself. It says designer cloth, painted faces, fancy glasses, superhero capes, Darth Vader masks, Fortnite colors. What happened to regular camo with helmet? A helmet, I assume he means. I feel like this example is not the best example, because to be honest, that skin, although yes, very out there, it's like a gold gas mask looking thing, there are definitely worse skins, is kind of the point I'm getting at. So, and I mean in other games, you look at Call of Duty, there's like freaking like anime girl skins and stuff, and it's just, that's like the step too far to where I'm like, come on, this is a shooter, like, and it's meant to be somewhat realistic. If it's like a game like Fortnite, I couldn't care less about the skins in those games, because it's not trying to be realistic, it's just meant to be fun. Whereas a shooter like Battlefield or Call of Duty, even for example a game like Halo, that is obviously not realistic because it's set in freaking space, but the game has a serious tone to it. So if you started putting anime skins in Halo, I would feel the same. I'd feel like that's a bit over the top. But skins like this, I don't honestly mind that much. I think they could get a lot more wacky with it, and I think I'd have an issue if that were the case. But I feel like they've actually done a pretty good job with 2042 in terms of not going too far, but still, you want your skins to be out there enough that people are going to buy them and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I feel a bit torn on this one. I do see where the complaints come from, because if you could have it in a perfect way, it would just be skins like this that were just typical military outfits, but they're not exciting enough. There's only so much stuff you can change about those type of skins, really, that people just wouldn't buy skins, and then they wouldn't make money off microtransactions, and then they wouldn't support the game properly. So it's kind of, yeah, I don't know, it goes both ways, but I feel like this was kind of a bad example, because that skin isn't that bad compared to some games out there that I've seen have some pretty absurd stuff. Ironically, the very next post is pretty much what I was getting at. This is the type of shit, like, genuinely, maybe not an actual like cat or whatever the fuck that is, but like it's nearly that level. Like, you're not playing as an actual cat, but you like can make your character look borderline like a freaking cat and shit like that. So that's actually pretty funny that this person seems to feel the opposite of what the other post said, which is weird, because initially when 2042 came out, a lot of people had issues with there was the Santa Boris, and then there was I think it was the McKay, like the farmer McKay or whatever, who had, or like cowboy McKay or whatever he was. People had a lot of issues with those, and they were a bit goofy. I didn't like the Santa one, to be honest, because it was just kind of like, what the hell. But it's funny how it's turned around, that now 2042, I think personally, has kind of gone in the right direction with the skins, where, like I said, they're a little bit out there. They're a little bit like this one, a gold gas mask with like all inscriptions on it and stuff. It's definitely weird. You wouldn't see that in an actual war, but it's not like you're not playing as a fucking cat. So it's, yeah, I don't think they've gone that bad with it. I'm glad someone at least agrees with me. Shroud talks about how DICE paid around 100 content creators to help them develop the game, and then completely ignored every advice they gave them. What the hell?
Dude, let me just say something before we start this 2042 video. They asked and paid for maybe 60 to 100 content creators.
Paid for? Interesting.
For their help. Okay? They did consulting with about, a lot of us. It started with like 60 of us.
I wonder how many they paid.
Narrowed down to 40, and then 20, and then 10, or whatever it was. Did it a few times. They didn't listen to a thing we said. I
have to agree with that part.
Not one thing we said. Not a single one. Not one. Why the f did they pay us? I mean, I got paid. But
yeah, I was going to say, you can't really complain.
Like, we know what we're talking about. We play games for a living. We don't stop. We just play. We have you guys in chat who just
has he got a fucking Iron Man in the background? That is a whole ass Iron Man suit.
We are the mastermind. listen to
It
us.
looks like it anyway. I don't know if it is. So I knew that they had done consulting with players because I was involved in that. There was a lot of people. It was well over. I don't know if he's talking about the same thing that I was involved in. He's probably not, because he said that they got paid for it. So this is probably a separate thing. And it probably was well before launch, I'm not too sure. But the stuff that I was involved in, there was well over 100 just in Australia. We had a full lobby of 128 players playing the game before launch. And yeah, I think it must have been a different situation, because they did ask us for feedback and stuff once we'd played the game. They said, like, what can we do different and all that kind of thing. But it wasn't necessarily consulting, if that makes sense. I don't think they didn't like bring us in and say, like, here's what we're thinking, what do you think, and what can we change. They just kind of gave us the game a little bit early, and we played it and gave feedback, and they didn't really, like Shroud said, they didn't really seem to listen, because nothing that people were saying really seemed to change. And obviously it was not that long before launch that this happened, so it's probably too late to freaking do that anyway. But yeah, I had no idea that they actually paid people to do that. This must have been a separate thing, and I think that's fine if you actually take the advice on board. In fact, I think that's good. Like Shroud said, streamers play games for a living, especially when it comes to like someone like Shroud. If you guys don't know who Shroud is, because that clip probably came across pretty like arrogant from him, saying that we know everything and stuff. He's like a ex-professional Counter-Strike player. He's one of the biggest streamers in the world, and he's also incredibly good at every game that he plays, essentially. So I do think they should bring people on like Shroud, and there's hundreds of other people out there to bring on, and they should actually listen to that advice. So I think doing that is fine, but yeah, the fact that they completely ignored every piece of advice, that is odd. And like Shroud said, it's like, why would you bother paying people to do that if you're not gonna listen to the feedback? So very interesting there. I hadn't heard about that side of it. I've heard like rumors of, for example, people like Westy having complaints with how they handle things, that again, they didn't bring those sorts of people on board. Westy's been around the game for as long as anyone, making content on it, and those people aren't involved in it. I think people can see it as being entitled when creators say, why wouldn't you involve us? But someone like Westy or like Jack Frags or people like that who have made content on the game pretty much daily for like 10 years. They know the game better than the actual developers do, which I know sounds ridiculous, but they would, because a lot of the people working at DICE now are not, they haven't been working on the game since Battlefield 3 and 4 and stuff like that. A lot of them have, of course. I'm not saying every single developer, but there'd be a lot of people at DICE who don't know more than like a Jack Frags or even a Shroud. And yeah, I definitely think they should get those people involved, especially when the game and the franchise as a whole needed a bit of a kind of like a course correction. Obviously Battlefield 5 was a bit of a bummer for, I think, pretty much everyone, and this game kind of needed to correct that course, and now it's just gone the opposite direction, really. So yeah, I never thought about that, about them bringing people on and actually paying them. That's the other thing. If you're going to pay people, you would surely listen to their advice. It's one thing to just have a free like early play test or whatever, but paying people and then just ignoring what they said, that is pretty absurd. Now, I saw this on Twitter, and I knew this would come up at some point. Literally no winning with you guys. Please give us back Stadium even as its own CQC map. Okay, here you go. And then he gets grumpy. That's not the point of why people are mad. They're mad because they're selling it as a new map. They've said this season 7 is going to have 2 new maps, one of which is not new. It was in the game and they took it out. That's why people are mad, not because we're getting it back, because that is good. That is a good piece of content that we're getting back. I want Stadium back. It doesn't mean I'm happy that they're selling that as a new map when it isn't new. I think this post has quite literally just completely missed the point. I'm actually going to read the comments and see what this says. This point seems to kind of summarize, this is not a new map, this is an updated version of part of an old map they deleted. So yeah, that is just all you really need to know. I'm glad it's back. It's not a new map like DICE said it would be. It's really that simple. All DICE has to do is communicate clearly and honestly, and they don't run into issues like this. But it's the year of our Lord 2024, and if DICE hasn't figured that out by now, then they truly never will. Also, not coming out for 1 to 2 months until after launch in update 7.2. So even that is exactly, that is really just summarized exactly how I feel. He says here, I'm glad it's back. I am glad it's back. I'm still annoyed that this is considered a new piece of content because it's not new, and that's the issue here. If they had have stated that ages and ages ago, like season 7 will have 1 map and we're actually bringing back like a part of an old map, if they just said that, people wouldn't be annoyed. People would just be like, oh yeah, that's fair enough. People would probably still be annoyed that it's not much content because, again, 1 to 2 months after the actual launch, they waited 5 months for this season After season 6 is a long period of time, so it is still underwhelming in terms of how much content we're getting, but I don't think people would have been annoyed about it being called a new map if they didn't call it that. 7-month season and they couldn't get all the content out on time for the new one. That's another issue there, is that we waited so long and now we're still getting it 2 months after the season launches, which is, yeah, it's mental. So this post, I think at face value, like, it does look like it's he says literally no winning with you guys. It does seem like that. That's not the case. That's a very surface level like analysis of why people are annoyed. People are annoyed because they've said there's 2 maps coming, 2 new maps, might I add. They said new in the trailer. They didn't just say 2 maps, they said 2 new maps, one of which is a small section of arguably the worst map in the game that got deleted when they redid that map. So that's why people are annoyed, not because we're getting a part of that map back. Because, like I said, I'm happy with that. I'm glad they're bringing Stadium back. It's the way they do it and the way they communicate is just, it makes people angry, and that's not our fault. It is DICE's fault for the way that they do that. We're going to end on a funny one here. Seems familiar. Me believing in medics. The medic. That is just so true, man. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Especially, it's different if it's a squad mate and they're playing as someone that's not like an actual medic role. Fair enough, because they're not in like medic mindset, you know, they're just playing the game that, and it's sometimes, I've done it plenty of times, it's just easy to just not realize your teammates down. That's fair enough. When you're playing as like Falk or someone, especially Falk, I think when you're playing as Falk, surely you are switched on to being a medic. That is literally the point of why you've picked Falk, unless it's to heal yourself, but you can heal yourself as all the other assault specialists. So when it is like a Falk and they run up to you and then they just don't revive you, oh my god, it does my head in so much. I think it does everyone's head in, to be honest. I think that's the reason they brought in the specialist system, was to kind of get rid of that. I interviewed one of the people who was, I think, one of the producers of the specialist system, and she essentially said that's why they tried this way, because a lot of people would just pick the medic class in previous games just because they wanted those guns, and then they're not going to play as an actual medic. Now it's kind of like, you can, or at least at the launch of the game, it was like you can just pick whatever gun you want and you can just pick your role, and so people who play as a medic should technically, on paper, play as a medic, but unfortunately that's still just not really how it works. I just think that's never going to be fixed, really. It's a lot of people just play their own way, and at the end of the day, even though it is really annoying, like that's also fair. People should be able to play how they want, really, so we can't really crucify anyone for it, but it is definitely fucking annoying when someone is playing as Falk and they run right up to you and they just do absolutely nothing to help. But I don't think that's going away anytime soon, unfortunately. But that is going to do it for another Reddit reaction, boys and girls. I do have a couple extra Battlefield videos coming up, a few live commentaries on the way. I'm kind of getting back into it, having a bit of fun, surprisingly, with season 7. So keep your eyes peeled for some more Battlefield content while I'm sort of waiting around to see what happens with Extra Fight and stuff like that. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for those videos. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.